Hello, Ensign Taggart.
Hello.
Hey, Taggart, how you doing?
Good.
All right. So, my thoughts for today is mostly that it's a informal chat, informal, semi-formal. Talking mostly about the mission and objective designs. So that mostly that it's a informal chat. Echo. I think that's you, Jazzy. Informal, semi-formal.
My mic was actually muted at the
mostly
time.
about the mission and objective designs. So that mostly that it's a informal chat. Echo. I think that's you, Jazzy. Informal, semi-formal.
My mic was actually muted. Yeah, because I'm not using my special mixer right now. My audio is coming in like normal person style, and I'm using headphones, so I don't think I'm looping back. Yeah, because I'm not using my special mixer right now. My audio is coming in like normal person style. And
sorry, Jazzy, it's you. Everyone was muted, and I was getting the feedback still.
Because I'm not using my special mixer right
Pretty
now.
sure.
My audio is coming in like... No, because I can see you doing, like when I hear the feedback, I see your light blinking and mine not. So watch me mute my mic and it'll still do it.
Pretty sure.
No, because I can see you doing, like when I hear the feedback, I see your light blinking and mine not. So watch me mute my mic and it'll still do it.
Pretty sure.
No, because I can see you doing, like when I hear the feedback, I see your light blinking. You know you muted yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I muted myself because I was... Weird feedback thing going on right now. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out this weird feedback thing right now. Yeah. Yeah, I muted myself because I was... Yeah. I'm trying to figure out this weird feedback thing right now. Yeah. Yeah, I muted myself because I was...
Yeah, it's all low end. At least what I can hear, it's all low end.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out this weird... It was Twitch. It was saying it was muted, but not muted.
Ah.
It's like, everything's muted. Oh, well.
Ah, the gremlins.
Yeah, gremlins. Gotta love gremlins. I mean, it's not a stream unless there's a couple gremlins to start. Hey, Dag, welcome.
Of course not. Thanks.
All right, so I'm using a virtual camera right now because this is also what I'm going to be streaming. But yeah, just starting by looking at mission and objective design. So that'll be in the designer. Choose your module of choice. If you don't have a module set up, you can always use the custom module. But I got my Horizons at War. And I guess I'll just ask, do you guys want to ask questions or work through this as if we were creating a new mission?
I'm going to vote for the latter because I'm curious to kind of see how you guys have done it in the past, but open to other votes.
Can I ask I'd say if I could pause it, like what is the experience with designer in the chat?
I've been adding a bunch to Iris and trying to figure out how everything kind of ties together. I'm familiar with the UI, I would say, very thoroughly, the designer UI, but beyond that, haven't really gotten to playtest much.
All right.
I've created a few missions and tried. So I've tried the events, the encounters, dialogues, and tried to create a few custom things in the world as well, to various degrees of success.
All right. And then obviously myself and Jazzy have made several different missions. Jazzy's made more than I have, but what about Taggart and Crozier?
I don't have any experience with mission design, so I'm here to learn from the ground up.
Cool.
Same here.
All right. Well, then I'm going to back up just a moment to modules for an add a module, and this will be test module 1. You give it an ID, that's where it's going to be saved on the desktop, and you give it a parent. Right now, all the parents are going to be horizons, because that's the main architecture that we got. From there, you can name or rename the module, give it a description. This is a test module for demonstration purposes. Priority and version. Version matters a little bit, especially when you start sharing a module, because say you make a lot of major changes, just increase the version somewhere along there, maybe 1.01.
Quick question. Is anybody else using version control for their module building? Like, I've got mine up on GitHub.
I would like to, but I don't have the experience in setting it up, so I haven't committed any brain power to learning.
Okay.
Likewise.
I would like to. I would actually like to use an SVN,
Yeah.
similar to what we run with the Horizons test build, but I just haven't committed the time to learn.
Yeah.
That's something I have a lot of experience with and would definitely do when I create missions, and would be happy to share what I know about source control.
Absolutely. I'd
Yeah.
love
in the
that.
future.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to have that conversation.
And I'll chime in here just briefly. And the version number does matter in terms of, when you put a new version out in the world. When multi-bridge is in play, it does check not only the module IDs that match, but the version number must match as well.
Yep, I was about to say that. Part of if you make major changes, iterate the version, because if you're doing things like with Jazzy and I, if we want to play a mission on multi-bridge, it does check to make sure the version is correct. So if you make major changes, make sure you iterate the version, mostly so that you can make sure you're both on the same page and that there aren't any conflicts in case, like, I've made major changes to my module and Jazzy made major changes to the same module, but they're not the same changes. But neither of us changed the version. Don't want to have those conflicts. Priority has a lot to do with how Horizons loads the modules, what order it loads the modules. Because when you create a module and you load it in, if it has anything that is the same as a previous module that's loaded, and Horizons, the base Horizons module is a module. So you have anything that is labeled the same, or the same name, the same component name, same tags, whatever, the order that the modules get loaded in determines what overwrites what. And overwrite is it's not the right word, but it's what's the last thing that gets loaded in and has priority. So, for example, if I had a ordinance, I'm just going to quick add a wasp. And yeah, none of this actually matters, but if I have this wasp and there's another module that I load that has the exact same name, wasp, that priority and the order that the modules get loaded determine which wasp will be used in the game. And the priority counts up. So the Horizons, the base Horizons module is 1, which means that it will get loaded first. And then all the priority 2s, all the priority 3s, all the priority 4s, all the way down to priority 20. So if there's something special that you have that you want to make sure is in the game, make it priority 18, 19, 20. Default is 10.
Can I make an example here?
Yes, please.
So as you develop your world and your missions, and this is something that I've been trying to plan for in some of my work, I would like to have, the world of the Omega Directive be a module, and then the seasons under it being other modules that would load. So if you load the overall world of Omega Directive, it'll make sure you have the ships and the commodities and all the base stuff, the map, all of the things that should be there. And then as the seasons are loaded, it could change those things. So let's say in season 3, we add a new map or we change a map. That information can be in a module that's loaded so that we set things up where the base module, the world module, loads as priority 11. And then priority 12 is season 1, priority 13 is season 2, 14 is season 3. And so I'll tell Horizons, hey, load these in this order. Now, if I turned off seasons 2 and 3, turned off those submodules, then I would only load the season 1 data. So what this allows me to do is create the world that I'm trying to create. And it's not as important for me because I kind of live in a mirror universe of the Starship Horizons kind of stock world. But for the folks that are living in a Star Trek reskin of the whole game, you might want the actual reskin of the game and a lot of those like really high level things to be in a module that loads first. And then maybe there are 3 of you working on 3 different story arcs in that world. So, if I create, let's say we all work together to create, our Star Trek world, and then Patrick has Horizons at War and I have Omega Directive, and they're both forking off of the same big world. What order things load in start to become important because they start to override things. And also as seasons progress, you might see maps change, you might see things get destroyed or moved around, that kind of thing. So that's where some of this priority really becomes important. And when you're first writing stuff, it's not super important because you're not going to have a ton of modules loaded at the same time.
Exactly. But I wanted to, start with this is how we start a module, because we could spend a lot of time just talking about this screen, the modules, world building, names, everything. Commodities, ordnance.
Can I suggest something then? Would you mind recording this if you have Twitch open?
I already am recording this, actually.
Perfect.
Yep. Yes, I am recording this and then going to send it to Auric afterwards, and he can remove all the parts that make me sound dumb. Or not. But yeah. Yeah, talking about the...
He just throws,
the commodities, ordnance, models. Models will be its own thing some week because it's not terribly complicated, but it's...
Lies. Lies. I hate Blender.
It's not terribly complicated. It's just annoying. Like
I have to say, I prefer to use MicroStation still. It's way more expensive, so I only use it when I'm, somebody else paid for it. But
Fair. But let's get into actually adding a mission. So you have your module, come down to missions, add a mission. Give it a name. I don't know. What's this one going to be? Find the ruby. So the name, that's what's going to show up. The ID is where it's going to wind up on your hard drive. I didn't plan for that one. I'll go about that in a moment. Category, that's going to be on the main screen. When you are choosing a mission, the category is like Academy, Combat, General, HAW. The category you put it in here is the category it's going to be in on the mission selection screen. Find Find the ruby. That's a fetch quests. Map Milky Way. That's the only one we have available right now. That's the one that's used in Horizons. And then the description. Again, this is what's going to show up on the mission selection. So what you type here is going to be that little description, like under the long patrol. Patrol several key star systems during a routine patrol and check in on various comm stations and ensure they are safe. The duration and the difficulty. Difficulty is the number of stars you give it. Duration, it's going to be under minutes. And it's just self-defined, whatever you want to call it.
And those are not enforced in any way, right? Those are just suggestions to the...
Yep. There is no forcing the duration or the difficulty as defined on this screen. You can say random encounters enabled and end mission when all objectives are complete. We're going to leave those unclicked for right now just to simplify our mission. Ruby has been lost. Find it in the... Oh. Solana system. You want the description to be enough for the people who are reading it to know, oh, this is the objective of the quest, or the objective of the mission. Because really, a mission is a story, or a part of a story. It's a defined thing. This one is find the ruby. But other missions could be things like save a ship from an enemy, escort a convoy, homestead company, deliver materials to a mining platform, investigate a scientific discovery, repair a derelict. Anything that could basically be summed up in an episode of Star Trek is probably a mission. Anything a little bit more overarching, like defeat the Daiashi and take over their planets, their systems, that would probably be more of a campaign, and you'd want to break it down into individual steps, or even slightly complicated multiple steps. All right, so we've named it, we've given it an ID, a category, the marquee, which I could add a image for it. I did not plan any images for this one, so I'm not going to. Prologue is going to be what shows up when you first start the mission.
I believe it also shows up as your briefing in the comms window as well.
Yep. Yep, you can bring back up the prologue in the comms window. This is the prologue. I'm going to give you important information, set the stage for your mission. You can be as verbose about this as you want, or not. The epilogue, again, this is what's going to show up at the end of the mission. Congrats! You did it! You did the thing. For right now, type I'm just using as standard. And the mission saves regularly anyway, but you want to make sure that you do save it. And let's switch back over to this screen because I saved it. I now have this section of fetch quests called Find the Ruby. Now, I could try to do it, but it's going to probably fall apart if I did right now, because I don't have anything actually defined. So the first thing that you really want to do is add a player. And you can name the player whatever you want. This is going to be the ship name. So normally we call it the Horizons. I'm going to call it the Indiana Jones. Because, you know, far enough into the future, I'm sure they'll still be making Indiana Jones's movies.
I believe it's Junior.
Only for being formal. So you give it a designation, a faction. That'll be important for how it interacts with the other elements in the world. So I'm going to give it the Alliance faction. Class. This is the ship you're actually putting them into. So the Horizons is a specific ship that you can put them into. You can also put them into an ANAV or a Warthog or a Paladin mining station. This is just what the players are going to have to work with. You can put them in a dart. And it's possible to have them move ships and be in a different ship throughout the mission or throughout your campaign.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in that the vessel class definitions have a flag for whether or not it is a playable vessel or object.
You will be staffing a ComSat.
I mean, I don't think it's going to move much, but... All right, so... going to just set it as the Horizons, not going to do much. And then this last part, spawn, we're going to have to come back to in just a moment. Because we need to define a spawn point. Add a spawn point, and you give it an ID, whatever ID you want to give it. I'm almost always going to call it SP1. This doesn't get a lot of love. So, for the spawn point, you give it the ID, which will be important because you're going to select that for the player. Give it a map, system, planet, and maneuver. System, whatever system you want to put them into. If you want it in the Sol system, put it in Sol. And then you give it a planet. You can choose another planet. So if you want to put it at like Viridian 3, you can just say the Viridian system. Actually look it up beforehand.
Yeah, spelling's important in this case.
Yeah, been burned by that on more than one occasion.
Yeah, me too. I'm dyslexic, so I have an excuse.
Oh, I'm constantly cheating. I'm
I wasn't
constantly
born
loading
smart.
up a sandbox mission and going, I don't know where it is. Let me try. Let me look. And in fact, I will do that right now.
While you're doing that, as a quick vamp, I've found that when doing PvP missions and maps, I ID the spawn points based on what faction I want them to be. So if I have both Alliance and Dashi ship options for that world, I will make, you know, AS 1, 2, and 3 and DS 1, 2, and 3 for Alliance spawn and Dashi spawn, which means later when I'm popping the ships in, it just makes it easier to keep track. So I don't have to remember what faction that specific spawn point's based in.
One question about spawn points. Are they only for the player ships, or are they also used for objects in the game?
So objects will be spawned in a very similar manner. And, sorry, I just want to grab the spelling, and... Viridian.
Spawn points in that menu are only for player ships. Objects have a similar menu, but it's somewhere else.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
So you give it a location, Viridian system, Viridian 3, and again I cheated by loading up a sandbox mission and just going, okay, I know it's the Viridian system. Okay, Viridian 3, that's the spelling. Position is the X, Y, and Z axis from the center of the planet. So if I just leave this as is and just start, find the ruby. I'm going to start it up.
You didn't connect it to the ship yet, did you?
What's that?
Did you tell the ship to spawn there yet?
No, I didn't. So this should actually...
You failed with 0 casualties.
So go back to your player, give it your spawn point, save. So if you don't have it linked, that's what's going to happen. You're just going to pop in, immediately out.
There you go.
Huh.
Yeah, I think I know what happened here. I think you hit that spelling of certain planets with Roman numerals in them. I had the same problem when trying to spawn something at Viridian 3. I think you're in the space between.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, joy. All the ways that we can mess this up. I mean, it's a good thing. That way when you run into this problem yourself, it's not going to be
a surprise.
Yeah.
Who wrote this crap?
In this case, it was me.
The secret I found to finding... Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
You're just going to give up. Good
gonna give that one up for now. But Jazzy, what was the secret you found for...
I was going to say, the secret I found is that if you load your sandbox and you select the planet using the galaxy map view, then the waypoint information that it prints for flight will be the exact thing you should type. So that can be a really helpful trick. Or flying there and looking at the GM screen. Either way will help make sure that you know the right information for what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You can actually copy and paste off of the GM screen if you do it that way.
That's a good point.
Also, couldn't you just open another tab with the main Horizons module and grab it from the planets?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots
as long as you're in
of
debug mode and you can edit the designer page, correct? Yes.
Yep. The game master screen will give you a lot of information about the objects that you're currently next to.
And real quick, just for future reference, as the designer evolves, there will be suggestion menus for the known planets that you can pick from instead of having to memorize it as well. So that is coming.
Excellent.
Carry on, sir.
All right, so we've created a spawn point. We've not moved it from 0, 0, 0. And we instantly blow up.
Because
we spawned in the middle of a planet.
That's going to be a problem.
Yeah, so how big are the planets by default?
Every planet is different. So what I do to find that edge of a planet is I go by a factor of 10. And, this might get annoying, but I'm just going to start at 10, 10, 10.
10, 10, 9, 8, 7.
Everyone knew that was going to happen because 10 is way too small.
So it's more like 250,000, right?
I'm going to try 1,000. Because I'm only at Mars. It's not like it's a huge planet. It's not like Jupiter.
Right. But these are meters, not kilometers.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they're meters. So 1,000 meters is 1 kilometer. Mars is a lot bigger than that.
Yeah, that's just, and you need to meet the radius, not the diameter, which is at least helpful. I often will, again, I'll have my sandbox open in the other screen, and I'll use the GM screen to just see the XY coordinates. I'm just throwing in the different strokes for different folks method as you...
So
I love that you just keep doing it until you don't blow up anymore, though.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I did it my first time.
Oh, trust me, I have since completely cheated I have a little notepad that I went into the XML of the galaxy, and I just copied the diameters, sorry, the radii of all the planets in system.
Cool.
So
that sounds like something we should include in that special project.
Yes.
That's being unveiled next week.
Oh, it's going to be in there. Trust me. So I now have a starting position. I know I could probably go about half the distance closer, easily. I'm also one direction to the right, one direction south. Yeah, one direction east, one direction south, and one direction up. Because right now I turn to look down at it. So that is X, Z, and Y. Y is actually the distance up or down from the galactic plane, that top-down view you are. So if the Y is 0, then you'll be at the 0 level, or even with the planet. X, when X is positive, it'll go put you to the right of the planet. When X is negative, it puts you to the left of the planet. When Z is positive, it puts you south. When Z is negative, it'll put you north. So, like I said, we could probably be about half as close again.
And Hema, maybe you mentioned it, I just didn't hear you. What is the maneuver option for cruise? What does that actually change or do?
So cruise is if you're going to be in space. Docked is if you want the ship to start docked. So you have to undock in some way.
Gotcha, okay.
Which you can't be docked with the planet. It'll change the menu if you change that maneuver.
Yep. If you choose docked, you need to choose where you're docked at. So for example, I could say the comm station or Research Lab R1. And if I were to choose Research Lab R1, I would just choose that. So that way I could see the target intel, and I could just copy it in. Actually, I should probably do that as a...
Actually, in this screen, you can see the X and Z coordinates in the bottom right, just underneath Galaxy.
Yep.
So that's a good cheater way to find where you want to plop things.
Again, that's X and Z. If you want it up or down from the plane, that's the Y-axis. So, like I said, I was going to try Research Lab R1. Let's see if that works.
Do you know the name of the docking bay?
Have you created the docking bay?
Yeah, you do have to know that because different stations and vessels have different docking areas, Horizons included. Like for Space Dock, it's main docking bay, but every one has it different. So you do have to kind of look at your classes and see what kind of docks they have available, so that you can choose that.
Got it. Nope. Thank you, Bob. So it's not docking. Again, I could spend some time and actually look up what the dock name would be. I'm going to save us a little bit of time right now. And you might notice that it defaults, like if I gave it a invalid name, it defaults to whatever I had left it at for the position. Oh, and of course, pitch, yaw, and roll. Pitch is plus or minus 180. Yaw is plus or minus 90. And roll is, again, plus or minus 180. And that's based on your yaw, pitch, and roll here. You can go more than 90 or more than 180. So I could do pitch of 270, yaw of 75, actually, yaw of 180, roll of 90. But these are going to correspond to values for the flight station. So I'm now pitched and rolled and yawed so that I'm facing vaguely at the planet, but not really. I was facing way down. So that's just something to think about whenever you're designing a spawn point. You might want them to be looking where you want them to be, or you might not. You might want them looking out in space. I like 270 for now. So we have a player, we have a spawn point, and then objectives. I can add an objective here. Ruby found. We can group it, and that's going to be like the groupings under mission objectives on communications. Find the treasure. Is it a primary, a secondary, or an opportunity objective? Is our primary objective type, open, commodity, objects destroyed, objects hailed, objects scanned, objects survived, timed.
Just so you know, we can't see that drop-down screen on your stream for some reason.
Interesting.
Yeah, I noticed that earlier. Just thought I'd let you know we can't actually read that list.
Well, I can.
There you go.
Just arrow down through it. So I got open.
Slideshow it for us. There we go.
Commodity, objects destroyed, objects hailed, objects scanned, objects survived, timed, and then a bunch of depreciated objectives. And then primary, secondary, opportunity. So primary, and we'll go with commodity, tags, Ruby. Find the Ruby and bring it aboard the Indiana Jones. Visible, that tells you whether or not you can see it in this list. Now, since I just made an update and the mission's currently running, it's not going to update that for me. There it is. Find the Ruby.
And as an aside, he'll probably talk about changing visibility later through when you're progressing through the game. You want to make all of your objectives from the jump.
Yep. So, the big question then is, how do we make the objective complete? Part of how we do that is going to be with the event system. Does that come up? I want to make sure that's actually coming up on stream. Okay, so it does pop up, but it doesn't give me the drop-down menu. Cool. So for the events, sorry, I should actually go a little bit more into what I'm doing instead of just jumping through it. So the events are what run the mission. Basically, if somebody spawns in, if somebody jumps out, if these things happen, you can use an event to have it happen. And it's basically a condition or set of conditions and actions. I'm going to put this as Game Master and active. The frequency can be single, recurring, or manual. Most of them will be single. Some of them will be manual, especially if it's something that you want to happen only by other events triggering it, not it happens to be found, and the conditions were right. And then the mode is whether or not you need all the conditions or any of the conditions to be true. So, tabbing through, there's a whole bunch of different conditions you can look at. Device property, device state, device code. And these devices, these are things like your DMX lighting or the HOTUS or other devices you can link into Horizons. Correct me if I'm wrong, Auric.
Right, that's going to be things like devices are going to be things like your DMX or Arduino boards or props and other things you might have in a bridge build, things like that.
Duration, that is a straight up time duration. How long has passed? You're going to have the duration equal to, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, or not equal to.
Is that how long has passed since the since this mission launched, or since this event was activated? If it was not active before?
Since that event was activated.
Yep.
And actually, I will go into one of my other missions in a moment to really go into some of the events that you can do and some of the layering you can do for events. In fact, I'm going to do that right after we get through the list of conditions. Type emergency, yes or no. Mission percentage complete. This is going to be figured out by your objectives. So if you have 5 objectives and you set mission percentage complete, and you can give it, I'm assuming of is going to be like of a specific tag on those objectives, like finding the ruby or destroying darts. You said it.
Is that a group? Is the of referencing the group or a specific objective? I don't know the answer to that one.
I think it could be for either, but I haven't played out with the mission percent complete much. Mission score, mission state, mission time remaining. If you have a timer specific for the mission success. So you can have it true, you could have it false. And then we get to the fun thing, objects, cargo.
Just real quick, I just wanted to chime in on the mission success.
Yes, sir.
That will see less use on a one-off mission, right? Because when the mission's over, you just go to the finale screen, whether you won or lost, etc.
Yep.
But that particular condition will have a bigger effect on campaigns or open world missions as those two become available. Just FYI.
So an example of that, thanks for the reminder, an example of that is if we were doing Jazzy's Omega Directive and we fail the first chapter, set it to false, there's actually an action we can do where we can do a mission set where you can actually start a mission. So you failed the first mission, rather than go to the second mission, Jazzy could have a Omega Directive remedial class. and start that mission.
Welcome to the gulag. No. Sorry, Call of Duty joke.
But that's how you can like start to make more complicated stories and storylines where, you know, it's not just a one-off mission. You can play this mission, and if you succeed, you go to this chapter. If you fail, you go to that chapter. Good luck. Objects, cargo of, what did I call it? IJ6. Of is the ship that you're looking at. Now this could be a player ship. This could be a object you have put into the world. Cargo Ruby is equal to 1. Again, it could be equal to, greater than.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out, anywhere time you see of or source or name, that can be the literal name of the object or a tag, either one, and a tag could, in theory, also apply to multiple objects as a result.
Yep.
And that's true of anywhere in the event system.
So I could have cargo be Ruby equals 1. Object controller, object count. And for object count, this could be things like darts or daggers or, you know, other things that float in space. So for this, the object is how many darts are there left? As long as it's 0, then this condition will be true. Property, and this could be again, looking at the Indiana Jones 6 or Horizons or whatever. If you give it a core property or a component property. Right now, let's look at core properties. If you have it set to alert, behavior, faction, integrity, invincible, maneuver. It's like maneuver is, oh, Dave, I think you broke the object properties. I'm looking at behavior and saying is equal to and maneuver. Though I guess equal to docked would be accurate. So we have the IJ6, it has the Ruby, and it's docked. Then actions can happen. Object scanned, objective complete. Again, we can look at our objectives. Pedia viewed, Pedia visible, player hit, either the shield or the hull. Catastrophic. Proximity, this is how close one thing is to another. You enter a star system, you exit a star system. Enter a planetary system, exit a planetary system. Or you have a variable that you've defined elsewhere. These are all different conditions that we can play with. And again, we could spend a lot of time looking at all those different conditions. But the conditions are to say, hey, has this thing happened in the mission? When it has, I want these other things to happen. And those are the actions. You can adjust the time, add or remove cargo, give a device a command, pull a device, DMX, and encounter check, enable, trigger, an event enable, check, or trigger.
What, for both events and encounters, what does check mean?
So an event check basically forces to see if that event will ring true. It's more for encounters.
Right. Yeah, correct. It revalidates if basically, hey, event, if you're still true, And if so, it will then trigger, but only, so it's similar to a trigger, okay? But it will only trigger if the conditions are still true. That's different from an event triggering on its own when you have it recurring, because a recurring event will only re-trigger once, say, let's just say you had 5 conditions and they all went true, then it would trigger. It will not re-trigger until at least one of those 5 conditions has gone false and then true again, meaning there's a change. And so why that's important is with event check, you're essentially skipping that step and saying, I don't care if it hasn't flipped yet, I want to re-trigger it if it's true.
Got it. Thank you.
And I think that's also the only way to trigger an event that is set to manual frequency.
Yep.
Actually, I'll correct that. Actually, the event trigger will force it.
Well, yeah.
The event trigger action will force it. Event check in that example, by the way, would fail because it would check it's a manual only event, therefore it won't trigger. Does that make sense, Jazzy?
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah.
As I said, mission set, mission end. Mission end success, mission end failed. Mission waypoint. You can add one, remove one, send a message to the consoles, which is one of my favorite things to do, but we'll get into that in a bit. Send a topic, and I think that's send a topic from the iris. Steam
I
achievement.
think that's dialogue.
No, it's dialogue.
Topics.
Send topic
right.
is dialogue.
Yeah. Yep, it's dialogue. Steam achievement, which we're going to do much with yet. Objective completion. So that's probably what that's going to be. Objective visibility. If we had objectives that were not visible, we can make them visible, or if it's something that is no longer going to be available, you can make something no longer visible. Object property. This is actually changing the properties of an object out in space. So another ship or space station or something like that. Object spawn. Object despawn. Objects destroy. Which despawn and destroy are two different things. A despawn will make it just disappear. A destroy will make it blow up in space.
For despawn and destroy, the second field says tags, but can you put a specific name in there if you just want a specific object?
You can
to
put it a
despawn?
specific name. You can put a set of names.
Oh,
So,
okay.
like, you can have an object that you've defined as, you know, the Dark Commander, or what's the name of the villain from the Temple of Doom? You can name ships specific things, and you can put the tag as the name of that specific ship, or the tags that you have given that group of ships. And as I said, I'll go into a few more examples of these when I hop over to the Blue November, because I've done a lot of these things already.
Yeah. And I don't know if you hit it already, but you also can add or remove tags as actions as well. So that means you can include or exclude objects within tagged groups on the fly as part of those actions.
Haven't gone there yet.
Totally beat you to it.
Yeah, I'm going in alphabetical order, man. That's the way you put it. Pedia entries. You can show them or hide them. You can make certain entries visible so that the crew can go and look for them. Phillips Hue effect. Phillips Hue sinks. Script function. If you have a script that you've put in, and I'll show that just. If you script something out for yourself, what you can do here, you can have an event activated.
Quick question on that. What languages are supported for scripting?
Auric. I think it's C#, but
C#.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. C#.
None of that C dull around here.
you can have it play a sound. You can add a tag. Of is what you're adding the tag to. So, for example, you can add a tag to Dr. Jekyll. And give it a tag of villain. So that means that the shift, the Dr. Jekyll, will now have the tag of villain, and I could tag villain or Dr. Jekyll for checks or conditions or to make something change.
But that wouldn't happen if you didn't deliver the serum, hence why you needed an event for that.
Exactly. You can clear a tag as well, removing it from. So like, again, Dr. Jekyll, no longer a villain or no longer a hero. You can add a task. This is similar, I think, to when you are using the comms communications to tell a ship to do something. Is that right, Auric? Not really use tasks. Jazzy, have you used tasks yet?
Yeah, I was gonna say, my understanding of it is that it's queuable actions basically, very similar to when you send it over comms. But if you send 3 tasks, it will queue them in that order, or you can clear all their tasks and assign them a new task. So think of it as like an action queue, like an RTS or something.
Yep. Variable set. Again, if you have defined a variable, you can set the value. You can create a local waypoint or an interstellar waypoint. And you can create the wait action in minutes, seconds, and milliseconds.
And this can be really, really helpful, not just for building something that's going to take 5 seconds to happen, but also if you find that actions aren't firing in time, or like things are happening all at the same time and it's confusing horizons a little bit. So like, for example, if you spawn an object and then want to change the parameter of an object, if you try to do those 2 things at the exact same time, you sometimes the object hasn't finished spawning when the command to edit the object goes through. So instead, you might spawn the object, wait 50 or 100 milliseconds, and then change an object property or something like that, or send a message or something like that. So I tend to put in some really short waits, like in the milliseconds, in addition to doing full second and full minute waits. So they're kind of 2 different ways to think of it. So that's just a fun little hint. Be on the lookout for, especially with spawning an object. You spawn something, you might need some time before you can send a message.
Yep. And then the last thing is the order that the actions are in is important because that's the order that things are going to happen. So if you move weight, and if you grab the gear, you can move things around. But if, for example, I have this event, Ruby found disabled, and I have that at the very top, it's just going to disable this event and stop everything else from happening. And I'm sure you're all thinking, why would you want to disable an event in the event itself? Well, I can give you some very good reasons why. So this is the Hunt for the Blue November with 28 events. So one of the things that I have in this event is I have things popping in to harass the player. So duration of 5 minutes. As soon as this is activated, 5 minutes after it's activated, it's going to spawn a Dark Commander, and a whole bunch of other darts. Now for this object spawn, I gave it a name, class, faction, distance near the player, and I gave it a tag of DC. And that tag is just to make it easier for me, so that the other darts, I spawn them near that dart commander. Let's spawn the darts. Gave the dart commander a dialogue property that's different from the base die sheet dialogue property. Enabled another event. Actually enabled two events and then disabled the darts. And that's because if I disable the darts now, I can come back to this event later and re-enable it and have it pop in 5 darts again later. So like basically I have it so that the darts initiate the daggers initiate the ANAV. And again, it's the same thing. It's spawning enemies, giving the things that I've spawned a property, enabling another thing and disabling this one. And then I actually have it so that there's 2 different dialogue trees. So I have it repeating for darts 2, darts, daggers, and ANAV 2. But then the ANAV 2 cycles back to darts 2. So that's sort of like how you can start to layer events together so that you have things triggering other things. Now these ones are just straight durations, but you can have things like run at 80%. So when the Imperator, because I didn't call it a Paladin, I called it the Imperator, and the Imperator's relative integrity is at 0.80 or 80%. And that's the whole integrity. What it does is it's going to shoot a message to the player from the Blue November. It's going to idle the Blue November, creating this run waypoint to Mars. And then I told it to go to that waypoint. Then it completes the hunt the Blue November and makes the objective pursue the Blue November visible. I then enable the next event that I want it to be able to do and disable this one. Just in case it gets any silly ideas about repairing itself, and then that 80% integrity is no longer true.
So, I know this is a lot of stuff, and spoilers for those on the call, something is coming really, really, really soon that will make you not have to write all this shit down that we just went over. So everybody stay tuned next week for a big cool thing that will make all of this familiarity exercise a lot more useful.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
All right. So I've been doing a lot of talking and just showing off things. Are there any questions about anything we've shown off so far?
Kind of, I guess. I'm assuming you might get to this later, but like dialogue trees.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is meant to be a series too.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that this is not meant to be like a 7-hour masterclass, because I know that we could probably go down those rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Hey, I just had another iced coffee. I'm good to go for a while.
Yeah, I got a very small dog that I'm expecting to ask me to go out at any moment, and I'm going to have to tell her to wait for a little bit. But so no, that's actually dialogues I can jump into in a moment, but that's really part of the objects class. I mean, there's also comm channels, but it's more about objects. So I'm going to open up a second designer. So that way I can jump it back and forth between the one that we're working on and the one I've already done. So objects are the other objects in space, whether it's enemy vessels, comsats, stations, anything that you want to add to the world. So just call this the temple because that's where it's going to be. That's where the ruby is. We can give it a designation, tag. Faction, again, tells you how the ships are going to interact in the world. Alliance, we get along with other alliance, they ain't going to get along with Daishi. And then class is what you're actually putting it into. So I'll just make it a debris field. That sounds right. 0 means that it's going to default to the number of crew that is default for it. Broadcasting, invincible, and log activity. These are both player and GM interactions. So invincible means that it's not going to blow up. Pretty straightforward. And some things you don't want to be able to be blown up. Like, the temple's going to have the ruby in it. I don't want them to blow it up. So I'll make it invincible. Broadcasting is just whether or not when you're on that sign screen, whether it's something known or something unknown. If you have to scan it in order to see what it is. And then log activity, that's going to be for the GM to log when something happens with it. Or does that also make it create, it logs the activity in the debug log automatically?
That makes it log it in the debug log.
Got it.
It doesn't log that object's actions unless you check that box. Because you don't want to necessarily log every dart, but you want to keep after the main villain and things like that as you're debugging a mission. And as you lock in a part of a mission, you can turn off the log activity so to just keep your log free and only log the shit you're actively trying to do.
Yeah. Typically, the log activity is really for the game master and the mission designer at the end of the day. So you can really see what the sequences are.
Yep.
It's really helpful, especially when you get into complex logic, to see the order of operations, to see this hit, then that hit, then this triggered, then that triggered. So as you're digging in, it's a nice tool. That's a recent tool, only added in the last month.
Cool. Sorry, I'm actually just checking in on the chats to make sure that I didn't miss anybody saying something. Yeah. All right, so location, this is where you're placing it. And you don't need to put the system in for the location. You just need to give it a the location that it's at. Just the planet, so... and I'm going to have to cheat on this one because I can never remember how to spell it. G-E-U-S-E. And again, you can figure out your position using the GM screen. I like messing with people and putting it at 0, 0, and then way above or way below the planet. Because we have a three-dimensional space, so why not use it? Orientation, again, you can define the pitch, yaw, and roll. This is a debris field. It doesn't matter so much, but I can move it around so that if I had 3 of the same debris fields, they're all oriented slightly differently so that they look visually different. cargo. Now we can add cargo. We'll give it a value. Joys of living in a city. Hard points. Chances are we're not going to do much with the hard points currently.
Yeah, that sounds like a not today.
That's a not today thing. Dialogue, you can add dialogue groups. You can start to add different texts. So you activate the dialogue group from like, yes, Jazzy, that is one of the.
I thought it would be helpful.
It's very
just
helpful. I love it.
A little TA Martha Stewart magic here. I threw how I storyboard the dialogue out because the way that if you look at the edit dialogue group dialogue box, it's a little bit daunting to try to figure out where all the stuff is supposed to go and how to interconnect it all. So each one of these little sticky note looking things, that is my dialogue groups. And then the topics are, of course, your replies. So the initial hail comes from this ship, Horizons, what can we do for you? With 2 responses. And those responses go different places, and those responses can go different places. And so this is how I plan the whole dialogue out. Then I go in and just knock out the dialogue groups and link them really fast. And if you have this printed out or you just make this on a piece of graph paper or blank printer paper, you can check these things off as you map them because you may have to write these and then go back through and link the topics to the other items. Sorry, dog screeching. So this is a great way to keep track of that. Again, it doesn't have to be digital. Pen and paper work great, but I strongly recommend doing this because it's way, 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 way harder without. I learned the hard way.
That makes sense. Is there any limitations to the number of topics you can have or texts or anything?
I don't know. It's a good one. Hey, Ark, any limit to how much shit you can pump into one of these dialogue groups? I'm sure there has to be some theoretical limit, but will we ever hit it?
Yeah. Well, while he's unmuting himself to answer that, one of the things I do want to say is that I've noticed the text up here. If you have multiple texts, what the computer will do is it will choose one of them to respond with. So, every time you find this place, it's not going to say, you found us, brave warrior, like a broken record. Sometimes it'll say, congratulations, you found the temple. It's a little dirty, pardon the mess. That's flavor. It can make the mission feel more organic, more natural, more... They're not all saying the exact same thing at the exact same time.
Yeah, sorry, I was in the elevator heading to the hotel. So I'm in New York now, everyone. So I'm back to normal. So your question about dialogue and the topics and the text, there is no mechanical limitation. I would say only practical game flow limitation in the sense of how you want the players to interact. So that's really up to the game master / mission designer on, do you want to give them 100 topic choices? Technically, you can do that.
Yep. So you give it the topic, and those topics will link to other things. And that's basically, you give it the text of, so glad to be here. And it can load it to a new topic. It can, there's a whole bunch of things that it can do. But then that will take you to topic 1, and then whatever actions it'll do. The other thing with the dialogue groups is when you activate them, it allows you to create an action when that dialogue comes up. So, for example, if you have DMX lighting and you go, oh, you found the temple, all of a sudden turn all the lights down low, or do an encounter check, trigger an event, send a message, all these different, the exact same actions you can do from the event, you can have happen when you start a dialogue option or dialogue tree.
And this can be a great way to reward your players for having conversations, right? So conversations can either be about collecting information that they will need later, or about getting through conversations to specific results. So, these actions can really become powerful for world building and making the game more than a smash and grab.
So, and then you can build up the dialogues from there. Yeah, I think maybe so many things on the next week list. But we can really go into dialogue at another time, and because you can make it as simple or complex as you'd like.
And I have some examples. If you want me to take a crack at that one day while you're writing something else, let me know, man. I can always tag in.
Cool.
Yeah, I would definitely appreciate that, because I'm thinking of this from the LARP aspect, so I do want it to be extremely intricate, and I'm just trying to think through the best way to accomplish that, so I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so there's actually, might as well bring it up, because you have these dialogues that you can make for specific missions, or specific objects. So, this is the temple, and that's the dialogue for the temple.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back to the module, because the module also has a dialogue section where you can write out these trees for your generic quote-unquote monsters. Daishi forces.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, the dialogue trees at the module level are meant for if you want to create a template that you want to use for one or more objects. So it's not really explicit to a single object, but maybe it's a group of objects that are tagged a certain way, because you can set dialogue based on tags, like I was talking about before.
Okay.
Yep.
So a bunch of your fighters have the same dialogue trees to chat with or whatever.
Yep. Because I wanted to have a dialogue tree that was different from the standard dialogue tree. So, for example, this one is request to leave. It's going to link me to why leave. And again, it's going to say, why should we leave? Give us a reason to leave. One of those two. And it's going to trigger this event. Darts idle. Because we're not talking. I don't want them to start fighting while we're talking here. We can give them a threat, which will link to the besmirch. Or we can give them reason, which will link to high command. And for the first round, whether it's high command or besmirch, it's going to attack. Whereas the second round, the darts will attack, or different event, the darts retreat. And in fact, my Anav dialogue, I have even more. Start with hailing them, which sends them to Y. Threaten, reason, assist. Each will take you down a different path. So, reason, that'll go here. We understand, but once again, we require certain assistance before we can leave. How many raw materials do you need in compensation? Which goes to the how much.
I think you misspelled gold pressed latinum. That's weird.
Well, you know.
I'm just teasing. One thing you guys will note is that one of the dialogue group IDs that he has for this is set to main. So again, like we said before with the whole inheriting things, if at the module level, this object has a main dialogue group, and then on the individual object you assign a main dialogue group, the individual object's main will overwrite the main from above. Or not overwrite, but maybe override is a better term.
Override,
right?
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
That's a better way, yeah. So that whole thing's loading in sequence, when you're planning out some of your terminology, and you'll see this if you look at the base Horizons module, you'll see there's this idea of a main dialogue group and things like that, all the way up at the Horizons level. So overriding, whether you're overriding something in Horizons or you're overriding something specific in your module, it's helpful to keep track of.
And you know, those dialogues and making the enemy idle so we can actually talk with them and interact with them will allow me to do things like, where is it? Is that it? Yeah. If the cargo of the ANAV raw materials is greater than 50, it disables all of my daishi. So they no longer attack. So you can have things like that hidden in, but it just checks to make certain to say, hey, has this happened? Has that happened? And you can make, through a combination of actions triggered by dialogue, or events or event chains triggered by dialogue, or dialogue triggered by events. Yeah, you can have a lot. It can get very complicated very quickly, which is why that mapping this out, so useful, so very useful,
so much easier. So I use this. It's called string theory. Not string theory. Yarn spinner. And you can actually get this as either a downloadable application or use it web-based. It's a great little development tool. If you were smarter than me and like actually build your own games, you could import all of this like automatically. But I just use it as a visual aid, honestly, and it does the auto cross-linking, so it's pretty fun and trippy. But hey, look, I did this on paper beforehand too. This is just easier to upload to my Dropbox.
And I'll just say, I'll just chime in real quick and just say that will you get this kind of complexity in Horizons visually at some point in the designer? Not necessarily like that, but I would tell you the designer tools that are already available, I consider like version 0.1. So I mentioned earlier about some other enhancements over time. The designer will get enhanced to provide more visual or adaptive information like that to help. And that would be true of events too, because events have a flow similar to a dialogue tree.
Yep. Yeah. Let's see. What did I skip? I skipped tasks and properties. So you can add properties, just like with the events. You can set behaviors, alerts, core properties, dialogues, integrity, maneuver. Like you can set it to maneuver, orbit, so that it'll be orbiting wherever you are. And that'll override the positioning, I think.
Just in the in properties world, we were talking about behavior idle versus behavior hold, which I don't think you said. This was one that tripped me up, and I wanted to make because
Yep.
RX here to make sure I don't fuck this explanation up. Idle, the object can choose to change its state itself. Hold, it is stuck in, you know, do
Yes.
nothing until it's told to do something else. So something that's idle could switch to patrol or intercept, whereas hold, it will stay put. Right? Did I do that one right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we kept saying idle, but I had a feeling that you did the same thing I did, where you thought idle was idle, and idle needed to become hold. So
well, so actually, and this is actually one of those things that I discovered just by doing it. For my Hunt the Blue November, to get the Blue November to run, I had to tell it to idle first.
Idle. Otherwise, it can't do the next task.
Otherwise,
whereas if you tell it to hold, it will stay put and it won't do the next thing. Right. Yes.
Yeah. I had to break the chain of tasks because the task was destroy the horizons. So I had to break it by making it idle first and then say, okay, here's this waypoint for you. Go there.
Before you get your own ideas, try this one.
Yep. Yeah, and that's just one of those things that I sort of discovered, and you're right, we totally should have brought that up, that there's a difference between the behavior of hold and the behavior of idle.
So I'd ask one last question before we get like too far down the rabbit hole. How do we end this mission? Like, how do we get out of the mission when we think all this stuff's done? I think there'd be two good ways to do that.
So the way that you're right, there's basically two ways to do that. You can either have an event check for something and end the mission with an action. Now that's a fantastic way of going, okay, you have found the ruby, you're now docked, congratulations, you're done. And using events to end the mission can allow you to end the mission with multiple things going right. For example, if in the Blue November you decide to listen to the Blue November and destroy this rogue factory, you can still win. It's another mission and success, but it's not the objectives you started out with. The other way is, now that we've created the player spawn points and objectives, and we have this objective and it's false to start, and things happen to make that event true, or that objective true, especially if you have multiple objectives. You know, maybe you'll have Ruby found and Dr. Jekyll apprehended. I don't know. It's something. Once both of those are true, you can have it that the mission will end automatically when all objectives are complete. Those were the two you were thinking of, right, Jazzy?
Yes, those were the exact two I was thinking of. I felt like we've had this 1.5 hour long discussion about how to build a mission, and we didn't talk about how to end the mission.
Yeah, we didn't come back to the beginning because we're like, we're going to leave these two things alone for now.
I know you were thinking that, but I was also thinking of at what point we start to lose, you know.
Yeah, lose the thread.
I have the luxury of not having spoken for the whole time for the last 1.5 hours, so.
All right, so again, there's a lot more that you can do. You can add waypoints. Again, you give the waypoint a name, a description, type, and target. And the target is just where you're sending them. You can have multiple players, multiple spawn points, multiple objectives. Comm channels, these are things like, we go back to the main, and I'm going to totally cheat and go into the Horizons folder and look at Homestead Company, because I know they have a comm channel where they have the Homestead Company's comm channel that you can't close. And you can have events, message to that comm channel. And again, a whole bunch of objectives. A bunch of them are visible, a couple that aren't. The ones that are visible are all primary. Ones that aren't visible are secondary, but they'll be revealed through events and things that happen. Yeah, I cheat a lot by going into the Horizons folder and looking at some of the base missions and going, now how did he do that? Because I'm going to steal that idea.
Don't we all do that? I mean...
No, I actually don't.
Well,
I
then you
figured it out
should,
myself.
okay?
I probably should. But I don't remember how it works as well if I don't just keep poking at it until I'm sure I got it figured out.
And so we also, so in addition to those of you that don't know, we do have a mission share Google Drive where we've been sharing the stuff we've been working on. Not necessarily saying that it has my latest and greatest. It always has my latest and most potentially stable release, but not only being able to pick apart the Horizons ones, but also picking apart what HemaCast, myself, and anyone else who's contributed to that folder have contributed. Oh, look at that! There's the folder.
Yeah.
I believe we have it pinned, accessing the folder. And then if you would like your own module folder, please shoot me a DM and I will make you one so that you can edit your folder, but everyone else is read-only.
Cool. All right. So
I get a question. Hello.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Marillion. I'm new to you, and I don't know if I'm allowed to ask a question here.
Yeah, I was actually about to open it up to questions.
I don't want to interfere. Hi, I'm from Germany, and I get a question. If you have some kind of item in this collection of spawn points, objectives, or something like that, and my question is, can you copy one event, for example, from one module into another, right from the engine here, from the designer engine?
Currently, no. Auric will be able to answer that a little bit further, whether he plans on that happening in the future. I can tell you what I do when I need to copy an event from one module or one event or one mission to another. What I do is I hop into the XML and I copy from one mission and paste it into another, which I don't recommend doing, but it's a way to do it.
I think we could probably do an entire session or two on how to manipulate things directly in the XML, and the good, the bad, the ugly, the cautionary, and the necessary in that world.
Yep.
Yeah. I would say don't expect like from module to module copying anytime soon. Eventually, yeah, I think you'll probably see it, but I don't want to get anybody's hopes up that it's coming, in the near future. For copying a lock, stock, and barrel event across modules, I would recommend ultimately what HemaCast was describing, which isn't, to Jazzy and HemaCast's point, it's not difficult, but it's a tiny bit of tedium, and you do just have to be careful when you're doing it. Not that you're going to destroy anything, but you might copy it incorrectly where then the module doesn't load, right? Because now the XML is wrong, things like that. And I don't want to make that sound scary.
Right.
Yeah,
but it's just one of the pitfalls.
It disappears for a moment, and then you realize, oh, that's a syntax error that I made. Let me fix it. Oh, there it's back again.
And for someone who hasn't worked in a markup language like XML or HTML, either ever or in a long time, there are better ways than using Notepad on Windows to do that. And we use Notepad++ a lot. I use we kind of arbitrarily. I'm not sure what everyone's really using, but Notepad++ is a little bit better at organizing these different brackets and things. And also it has an XML tools plugin that you can activate that will go through and just do a quick error check to make sure that all of your syntax is relatively correct. Everything you open gets closed again, things like that. And so those two little tricks can make it a lot less intimidating to work in XML. And also, if you're going to open the XML of your mission and start messing with it, copy and paste the file so that you have a backup. I create a backup of my module about once an hour when I'm actively working on it, and always at the beginning and end of a new session. So I actually have a separate hard drive on my computer that I just save copies of either text files or whole modules. So if you're going to start editing the XML, I recommend, the whole save early, save often, save more than you think you should have to.
Thank you for the answers.
And don't just save, go ahead and fork it so you're not overwriting your previous saves. So if you discover something that you did messed it up 4 steps back, you can go and pull what you need to fix from there and pull it into something later.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, again, I could probably go on about, good file hygiene for about an hour, so I'll spare you. Yeah. But,
But, to your point, the XMLs aren't really scary. This is the XML for Blue November. And it's object by object, event by event.
Yeah, and if you use something like Notepad++, which you can download for free, it does format it for you, which is nice.
Yep. So I could do something like at the beginning of events. Okay, I got this event booby trap. Conditions, actions. That's the end of the event. So that's the entire booby trap event. I can copy that and I can put that into another XML. And it's just as simple as knowing, okay, the event starts here with this open caret event, and it ends with the /event there. And then the next event starts underneath it. And that corresponds to... I left my Horizons at War. That corresponds to these events here.
We only see your XML and your face in the star background.
Right.
We don't see your
I gotta
example.
Switch. Thank you for telling me.
I'm always willing to talk. You know that.
There we go. So that corresponds with the booby trap, darts, all those things, with the information in the XML. And you can find that information, or you can find the mission XML by going to your, wherever you have Horizons saved on your computer, going to modules, going to the module as you've labeled it. So again, what we did for this one, the TM1, the test module 1, is the folder name, and then under that missions, in the folder of missions, you'll find, for example, find Ruby.xml. All right. So, anything you guys want to go over to wrap up for today? Because this is a lot of information, and as Jazzy said, we got a super secret project that will be announced probably Tuesday if it's done enough. It should be done enough. Enough.
I think it will be done enough. I've been working on the designer portion of that, and I think that at least enough to be dangerous will be in there, and it will be continuing to grow as we fill out other parts of it.
So, Jake, I know Oryx said to me you had a whole bunch of questions that you were getting ready for me. Do you have any of them that you want to toss out right now?
Jake Rika is typing. This is that moment where he's like, "Ah, shit! I should have written them out so I can copy and paste them." I did take notes in addition to the fact that, of course, you recorded it, but I took some notes for us on things that we talked about, questions that came up, things we didn't dive too deep enough into, things we, all that. So we have some notes from the questions that have come up. Now I will spare folks.
But I have a real important question for Jake. Is he a commander?
He did get a headset, Dave. I don't know if you saw that.
Yay!
He's only a lieutenant. He hasn't been promoted yet.
He got stuck on a planet for too long. Well, I'll let Auric explain that joke a little bit later. But I think we'll wrap it up for now. And
All right.
Next Friday, we'll go into more.
Yeah, and I suspect, and everyone that's joined can tell me I'm wrong, I think tonight we'll put a lot of ideas and concepts in people's heads, and maybe they'll go play a little bit so that next Friday, this is kind of the seed to really dive in and get more complex.
Yeah. Just want to toss it out there. Actually, here, let me wrap up the stream first and stop recording.